whenever you're ready. Good? Okay. Imagine with me for a minute that you're sitting by a fire enjoying a good book with a cup of joe.
Sounds good.
I know you're college students, so I got a picture to help you guys imagine doing this in your free time. But you're reading and you ask yourself, what does blank mean? Now, blank could be literally anything you might ask while reading a book. And we ask these questions all the time. This is personally a question I ask myself a lot as someone who feels called to be a pastor as I read the Bible or for my classes. And this question is why hermeneutics are important. Now, hermeneutics may sound like a really out there term, but once you've listened to my speech and you'll understand what they are, why you should care about them, and a little bit of who is using them all today in society. Cool? So let's get started with the definition. What are hermeneutics? Well, hermeneutics simply can be said to be interpretation. It comes from a 2,000-year-old word, hermenio in the Greek, meaning to interpret or to explain. Mainly it was used in terms of interpreting people speaking or language, but we're talking mainly about literary hermeneutics in books. But more specifically than just being interpretation, it's the process of interpretation or the process of understanding something. A German philosopher and theologian, Friedrich Schleiermacher, arguably the greatest influencer on hermeneutic thought, wrote in 1828 that hermeneutics is the art of understanding, primarily a written discourse. So it's an art, it's complex, it's different approaches to it. I like to think of it like a skyscraper. If the skyscraper is your understanding, then there's a lot to get there. You need experts and tools and materials, and you can put them all together to build your understanding of a text up. But it can also be deceiving to think of hermeneutics this way. It can make you think that there's only one interpretation when there usually isn't. Tomasz Kalaga, a professor of literary theory in Katowice, Poland, wrote in 2015 that meaning in literature is potentially infinite. It never lends itself to an all-conclusive interpretation, usually, and we have to decide that for ourselves. So now that you know a little bit why it is, why should you care? Well, we're college students. Over 75% of you said that on average you're reading 50 plus pages a week just for your classes, which is mostly textbooks. And how you read and take in that information makes or breaks if you pass or fail. But also if you just want to read for fun, right? If you read a book and you don't understand it for fun, that book isn't fun, that book is dumb or stupid, right? You don't get it, right? Understanding makes things interesting, it drives conversations for us. But hermeneutics are also important to us as Christians as we try to understand the Bible. The Bible is extremely complex. It has 66 books, unique genres, unique time periods, and so literary hermeneutics help us get meaning, get the most we can from the Bible. Helps us answer questions like, what is the role of theology in the Bible? What is meaning based off in the Bible? What's a helpful reading of the Bible or a harmful one, right? So we have lots of reasons as believers and as students to figure out and to think that literary hermeneutics are important. But who all is really using them today besides us? Well, if you think of the Bible, then pastors immediately come up. Most of you said that if you were stuck on a passage of Scripture and trying to understand it, you'd go to a trusted pastor. And that's good, because that's what they're good at. They go to a seminary school and maybe get a master's of divinity, because that teaches them to be really good at hermeneutics, to be good at understanding everything it takes to interpret the Bible well. But it's more than just pastors. Think of lawyers, right? Lawyers aren't just like an NCIS doing cool things, right? They sit down and they have to read for hours, possibly hundreds and hundreds of documents per client, according to the University of Pittsburgh. Ann Sinsheimer, a professor of legal theory there, wrote that lawyers, when they read, are constantly trying to problematize their texts. They're constantly asking questions and trying to make the text meaningful or relevant to themselves. And so they have to do this, and they have to be really good at it to go through all this text really quickly. But those are just two examples. This could apply literally in any job that involves reading a heavy amount of work, right? So now that we have these things in view, what should we consider as we close? Right? You get the hermeneutics as a skill or a process of understanding, and we can get better at it. You get that it has value to us as college students and as believers trying to get the most from the Bible, and people use it in their jobs every day. So I hope that as you leave here and think about hermeneutics, you go back to the idea of sitting by the fire And when next time you ask yourself, what does blank mean, you take a little bit more time to figure out the right approach to answering that question.